Jessica Show.
Hi, welcome to Jessica. I'm your host, Jessica Rector. Thanks for joining us today. What we're going to talk about today involves debt, collection agencies, and bankruptcy. A bunch of things that we all think negatively about when those words are mentioned. But what we're going to talk about today is the experience of these and how we actually deal with them if any of these occur. Please welcome my guest today, Cammie Kidder. Thanks for joining me today, Cammie.
Sure, it's great to be here.
Thanks. Please tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, basically, you know, you all run into roadblocks in life, things that happen to you unexpectedly, and then there you are having to deal with it going, you know, how did I even get here?
Exactly, and I think that's what's so difficult is these are the kind of things that people don't think can happen to them.
Exactly. Or if they do, then it's their own fault.
And so how did it happen to you?
Well, a couple of different incidences. I had, my job had been eliminated.
Okay.
And when that happens to you, they offer you the COBRA insurance through the government.
Okay.
It's pretty expensive, but at least it's your same insurance until you can get a new job and get settled. The trick with COBRA is you have to pay every month on time, otherwise you don't have insurance. And if you go 30 days without paying, then they can just cancel your insurance.
Okay.
Which
seems pretty standard.
Right. So I'm paying my insurance, and I'm sending my copay in, and I send it back to Vermont, because I was living in Vermont at the time. And I'm sending it to this place in Vermont, and then I moved to California. So I close my bank accounts in Vermont. For that 1 month I'm going to be gone, I send them a cashier's check from the bank, and then I move to California, I open new bank accounts, I start sending checks from California.
But your insurance is still going, your checks are still going to Vermont?
Right.
Okay.
It all seems perfectly fine.
Right.
Everything's going along fine. Well, in January I break my leg. So it takes, I don't know, 3-4 weeks to even find a doctor out here that'll take the Vermont insurance.
Right.
I don't know my leg's broken. They don't know my leg's broken. I go to the doctor 3 times before they find out my leg is broken. Which is kind of surreal in and of
story
itself.
in itself.
It's its own thing. But every time I went to this doctor, they would call my insurance company, they would verify the benefits, they would tell me what my copay is, I would pay it, then I would be treated.
No problems?
No problems. Physical therapy, braces, MRIs, x-rays, pain medication. And then all of a sudden in April, I get this letter that says, yeah, we've actually retroactively canceled your insurance back to the beginning of January, so none of this is covered.
So this is 4 months after you broke your leg?
Right. 4 months of treatment.
And they called every time, and then now they're saying, the insurance is saying,
right,
no, you're not covered.
And so I call the insurance company, I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, well, apparently some of your checks were returned. Insufficient funds. I'm like, that's ridiculous. Which checks? And they're like, well, the ones for October and November. That was before I moved to California. So turns out what happened was I'd send the checks to the insurance company. Insurance company would see the check. They would send it to my old employer for them to cash, which they did not do. They were
Your old employer didn't cash it.
They were sticking them in a drawer for some odd reason. So in like April, they decided to cash all these checks all of a sudden. And of course the ones drawn on the Vermont banks don't clear because those accounts have been closed for 6 months. And so they cancel my insurance.
Which sounds weird. Let me back up. It sounds weird because when companies get checks, usually they cash them right away. Why are they holding on to them?
Well, and especially in a situation like this where you know you have to pay every 30 days, you're not going to have insurance, why would you even think they weren't being cashed?
You wouldn't.
And they told me, well, you're supposed to call us and check.
Who calls
Who
and,
does that?
and checks to see if their checks are being
Hi,
cashed?
Citibank, have you cashed my check? No one does this, right? So
all your time would be taken up doing that.
I'm trying to get the whole thing resolved. It doesn't get resolved. I get a lawyer involved, small Vermont lawyer, and I just said, could you write these people a letter and just tell them, you know, stop being ridiculous. Fine, if they need me to send them 2 more checks, whatever.
Right.
You know, because they say they didn't get their money. So I guess at this point, the only thing I'm really guilty of is sloppy record keeping. That I didn't balance my checkbook well enough to know why I had an extra $400 in the bank when I closed the account. You know, but you just kind of go, oh,
you're thinking bonus,
exactly.
$400
Must have made a math error finally in my own favor. So the lawyer, I think, is dealing with this. I'm sending the collection agency letters. I'm sending everything to him. I'm calling. My calls aren't necessarily being returned. Weeks go by.
So everything was already sent to a collection agency from all the stuff in Vermont that wasn't cashed?
Well, when the insurance got canceled, the doctor sent me a couple of more notices, which
Right.
I then sent to the lawyer saying, you need to call them up and tell them to pay these
Right.
because I paid my insurance and I was insured, and I never would have had a $2,000 MRI if I didn't think I was insured.
Yeah.
And I never would have had 4 months of physical therapy if I didn't think I was
thinking
insured.
you're paying out of pocket.
You know, no
I
one
can
would
do
do
without
this.
the physical therapy, thanks.
I can stretch my own muscles, you know. So I think he's dealing with it. And then I start getting notices from collection agencies. I go back to Vermont. I meet with this man, and I said, you told me you're dealing with this. Yeah, I'm just waiting for their lawyer to get back to me, and they're saying this, and looks like they sent you notice, but they sent it to the wrong address. They sent it to someplace in Iowa. I'm like, I've never lived in Iowa. How am I responsible for that? Just all this nonsense going on about, you know.
And how long was this now afterwards?
This is now probably like Thanksgiving time.
Like 11 months later. Oh my gosh. 10 months later. Oh
So 2 days before Christmas, I get a knock on my door, and I am being served with papers from the court by a process server that I'm now being sued by this collection agency for these medical bills. I call the lawyer. I'm freaking out. I'm like, I am now being sued. Why did you not deal with this? And they're like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, I guess we, you know, it just,
slipped through the cracks.
you know, well, I guess, you know, I mean, we did tell you that we weren't sure there was anything we could do.
Well, I need a definite answer. I mean,
I thought you were dealing with it. I have not gotten any communication from you whatsoever that you're not dealing with it. I would have not just ignored these bills and these calls from these collection agencies if I thought you weren't dealing with it. I would have dealt with it, or I would have found somebody that would. So now I get served with these papers. The lawyer is not helping me.
right.
I'm being served in California. He's a Vermont lawyer, can't do anything anyway. So I think I'm a reasonable, intelligent person with a college degree.
Right.
Let me read through these 20 documents here, figure out what they're saying, and the only thing it said is that I needed to respond in writing within 30 days.
Right.
So I do. I sit right down at my computer and I type up this whole thing that says this is why I'm not responsible, and here's the chain of events, and here's the lawyer's name, and here's this, and here's that. And I had like, I don't know, 15 attachments to it. You know, I put all this stuff together saying, look, I don't deserve to be sued over this.
I'm not trying to get out of it.
So I send that off. I go home for Christmas. I enjoy Christmas with my family. And I cut back here, and there is a notice from the court with my response returned to me, saying that it wasn't in the proper format and I didn't enclose the fee, therefore it wasn't filed, therefore I lose.
And that's it?
That's it.
Because it wasn't in the proper format. Did it say in there that it had to be in a certain format?
It did not. They say apparently everyone knows this. They know that it's supposed to be.
I didn't know this.
It's supposed to be 2-inch margins, double spaced, and that it's $300 or something that you're supposed to send in. Who knows this? Who's ever been sued before that, you know?
It didn't say anything in there about having to pay.
I swear it did not. I read every page of that stack of papers. And
okay, this is a nightmare.
It's truly a nightmare. And I'm sure that they have some kind of like instruction manual or some kind of thing.
But who would think that you would need an instruction manual? If you're being served and there's 20 pages, you're going to think that if you just read these 20 pages, you'll be fine.
And it says you have to respond in writing within 30 days. It doesn't say in a certain format. It doesn't say with a fee attached. It doesn't say any of these things.
So now you're thinking you have a good case.
Right.
That you can say, okay, well, you know what? It doesn't say this. It doesn't say this. I shouldn't. There should be some way that I can still win. So
right.
then what do
but
you do?
I just totally lose.